So I was having a conversation with a friend. I was telling him about the situation where I bought something online that had a little information tag next to it that talked about how the purchase was going to be carbon neutral. And carbon neutral is the company is going to donate money to a green cause to offset the carbon that is put out as a result of shipping the product to its final destination. And I was impressed with it. And I think that that type of buying and that type of transparency is going to become more prevalent in the forthcoming years. And I told my friend that how I thought that this was going to become more popular, and he was skeptical of it. He told me that he thought that the carbon neutral information was just marketing. And that's a reasonable view. I hear this, I've heard this from other people when they hear something that's too good to be true, especially from a company or especially from a brand. They say that's just marketing, and they kind of assume that what's being said is bias. And of course, it is in some ways, but not in all ways. But again, I believe it's a reasonable view to hold that this is just marketing, because time and time again, we have seen companies not only have bias towards the type of business that they're in or the products that they serve, but just straight out lies. I mean, you think of the cigarette companies in the 1950s. When you look at some of their marketing materials during that time, you'll see doctors recommending cigarettes as some type of health remedy. Or fast forward to the 1990s, where Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin, not only did they have marketing materials that said that OxyContin wasn't non-addictive, but they were saying that it was counter-addictive, that you'd be less addicted to anything else if you take OxyContin, which obviously and scientifically proved to be false. And then I have a family member that made a great point one day at breakfast. He told me that looking at almond milk, he said, how could you milk an almond? He made a good point that that's just marketing. There's no milk in almond milk, but yet they market it as, they put it in the milk section of grocery stores, and yet it's not the same product. And that has actually impacted the dairy and milk consumption behaviors in our country. If you take a look at that, there's some companies going out of business, milk companies going out of business because of it. So all of those examples point to how it's reasonable to be suspicious of brands, because we have this feeling that we're trying to be persuaded to buy now rather than to make the best decision for us. And to me, that word persuasion, to persuade, is, at least from the current context, to me, that's not the right word when it comes to marketing, or when it comes to sales, or when it comes to trying to get people to see your point of view. I went to school for communications with a focus in persuasion, and it always felt kind of weird to me, that word persuasion. And that's because when I first started out in school, I had a friend of mine who was in his late 70s, very wise, was a longtime educator, started his own business, and he told me that he told me that you can't persuade people. I said, so what can you do? And he said, all you can do is influence. And to me, that influence versus persuasion is there's a big difference in how it relates to building relationships, building trust, and building long-term value. Influence, to me, is better than persuasion because persuasion carries this notion of manipulation. And I've talked about manipulation before, episode 149. Specifically, my concerns about the media and about tech companies. So that's already been stated, and you already know how social media apps are looking to engineer their apps to capture as much attention as possible to sell it. However, more so, even going outside of social media and looking at, what's the next step, is the next step is to buy something, right? To get a product or get a service. And to be skeptical of brands, I think, is good, especially of their marketing, to keep them honest. But that honesty should be tied to action. And it should be that action should be to put the customer first and to be of the highest quality of service that you can be. And I believe if we're all holding brands and marketers accountable to that level, then it's a win-win. I was just having a conversation with a friend who was telling me that he has knowingly clicked on ads and have found great products that he wouldn't have otherwise because of that. And that whole that buyer journey, as we call it in marketing, is contextual, and that context and that relevancy provides a lot of value. And I think that we should be utilizing the technology that we have to connect with each other and to learn from each other in that manner. If you already bought shoes, I shouldn't be showing you the same shoes, is an example. And because of that, building that trust, building that consistent action leads to influence. And to me, influence is long-term and requires consistency, whereas persuasion is more like a hit and run. And for me, when people talk about manipulation or even persuasion, I always think from a marketer's position, from a business standpoint, that people aren't stupid, and you want people to come back and you want people to trust you. There's a term called long-term, the term is called lifetime customer value. And I remember when I was first learning about this in school, lifetime customer value, they had talked about how McDonald's, they could track the lifetime customer value of customers in certain regions. And that value is way more important than the sale that you made today or this week or this month, because the best returns in life come from compounding interest. And when it comes to your customer relationships, that compounding interest is repeat business, and repeat business over the long term is the path to profitability. So people aren't stupid. I mean, if you manipulate them, it's only a matter of time before they find out and they stop being your customer. And looking at that lifetime customer value of things, and that repeat business, An example of how powerful that is would be residual income. As an older example of insurance agents, after a sale is made, um, they're getting paid residually, meaning repeatedly, anytime that that person is making that renews their policy, or in some cases makes payments, monthly payments on that policy. The agency will get a percentage of that during the life of that policy. And in insurance and other types of residual income um, uh, lines of work, uh, it starts out small, but once you start compounding, it grows over time. That's a little bit older example. Another example of lifetime customer value would be service as a software, SaaS. A great example of this would be Netflix, right? So Netflix is a software. They sell it to you as a service, and they get paid on a monthly basis repeatedly. And at this point, I just think about when you first started your Netflix account, or when you started bumming off of your parents' Netflix account. Think about all the months that have gone by of $10 out, or now I think it's like $12.50 out, and how that spreads exponentially at scale when many people get on board. So built into that is this desire to provide value over the lifetime of your customer, and that leads to long-term thinking. And long-term thinking requires you to put the customer first. Because trust, I've said before that trust is the currency of relationships, and relationships are priceless. And I was at a presentation of a relatively large marketing agency where they talked about what is a brand. That was the question that was posed to us, and the answer to that, from their point of view, was that a brand is a promise. And, just for a moment, think about the brands that you have the best relationships with. Don't they manage your expectations more than they manipulate or persuade you? And that management of expectations, and being able to fulfill that management, um, that lends to building that influential relationship, getting people to come back for more. I was just at Chick-fil-A with my wife over the weekend, and we put in our order, we paid for the order, and because there were so many people and so many people were being served, and they got us through the drive-through so quickly that they asked us to pull ahead to wait for the food to come out. Now, um, we had no problem doing that because of the way that we were treated when we first got there. It was with a lot of, I would say, generosity. And we've come accustomed to knowing how Chick-fil-A handles things. And we didn't have a problem waiting a little bit longer, but when they brought it out, of course the food was fresh, and of course they delivered it in a positive manner. And we will be back. We will be returning customers. And, that scenario, right, where you had to wait longer than you thought, was okay with us because they were honest with us up front, and they asked us to wait in line there, and they were telling us the next step. Now, it would be different if they kind of left us in the dark and just told us that they were going to have it out they were going to have it out soon, and they had us pull up, and their soon meant 20 minutes as opposed to our soon meaning 3 minutes. They were able to manage the expectations, and because of that, the context of the transaction was different, and we felt good about it after we left, and we'll be back. So that's, to me, that's long-term thinking. And because uh, because it's better to think long term, it makes it much better to not make the sale or make that short win today, so that way you can make the sale a decade later and the subsequent decades that follow. Because customer trust is at the center of everything. And you need and want to build trust today, tomorrow, and the next decade, to build that value over the long haul. And the only way that you could do that is by being honest, transparent, and being trustworthy. And with that, to kind of bring it home, whether it comes from a company or from a person, or whether you're a marketer or not, telling the truth, no matter how convenient it may be at the time, always is the best option in the long term, because honesty and consistency build credibility, which is more stable, reliable, and virtuous than short term profitability. And profitability. Can't talk. Thank you. And I just believe that that will pay off more in the future. So, with that, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're staying sane. And until next week, have a good one.